Welcome to Legacy Conversations, a channel where we preserve military memories and history.
Hello everyone, Chris here. Just a quick announcement. Won't be long because the monsoon has started here in Thailand, so I'm running up and down to ensure that the windows and doors are closed and then opened, and then checking for leaks on the new roof. So yeah, man, that's something else. But we started a new channel where we speak only about the books. Now, those of you who've been following us for a few years will know that probably the main sponsor of the Legacy Conversations channel is an author called George M. James. He's a military author, wrote dozens of books, and they all have a strong South African flavor, and a lot of them, well, 5 of them are actually not fiction at all. And the rest, about 49, 50 of them are all fictionalized, meaning that the books are very well researched, sometimes based upon something which might have happened, and sometimes based on training scenarios. And whatever you see inside them, like about history and tradecraft and weapon systems. A very strong South African flavor once again. You can actually take us the truth and nothing but the truth. So help me God. But of course, the stories and the characters are made up, but you wouldn't know that. A lot of people wouldn't know what's truth and what's fiction. But anyway, they've been appearing here on Legacy from the beginning. Why not? It's a way of paying the guy back. But we decided about a month ago we're going to start a dedicated channel on YouTube where we only speak about the books. And the reason for that is I want to keep Legacy clear from whatever comes out in the books, because some of them are fairly controversial. In fact, the fellow does not rate NATO or the US highly at all. In fact, he's been warning about BRICS since 2014. And he also looks at it from a biblical perspective at sometimes to see why the US is changing the way they're changing. Now, whether you agree with it or not is your decision. It doesn't matter. But if you want to go and look and have a quick look at the channel, the links are below in the description. But I'm also going to broadcast here the first video there, the introduction to the books, which is more than an hour, where I speak about what's behind these books, or what are we trying to achieve here? Why were they written, and why are they so suppressed? We even found Amazon where they would change the manuscript to make Barack Obama look better, and some of them are just heavily suppressed. Why? Because there's troops in them. There's troops which affect your life, whether it's Trotsky who said that you might not be interested in war, but war is interested in you. And that's sadly where we live now. Anyway, that's it. So the video is following. And then if you want to, just go and join at the other channel. For you who's already on Rumble, well, all the book videos would be there as well. They could also be on Odyssey. And that's it. That's my short story. God bless. Hope you're enjoying the channel. Thank you so much. We're heading for 4 years now. We actually have, if you count all the different channels together, more than 4 million views. And we're heading for 1 million hours of people watching. Let me tell you, that is fantastic. I'm really grateful and I'm really proud of you. We are getting our story out there. There's magnificent people coming to talk to us from across the world. Wherever you find a South African, they want to tell their story. Guys, please come. Come and tell us your story. Let us get these Takara, For many years, they got us from behind. They controlled everything. They made us feel shameful for our service. That's gone. That's gone. So anyway, that's the story. God bless. Bye-bye. Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I must tell you, this channel comes from another channel called Legacy Conversations. Legacy Conversations is way bigger than this one. That's where we speak to South African military people, all veterans. You know, in the 1970s, 80s, that entire generation had to go to the army. Or they could have gone to the Air Force or the Navy or the medical services, or they could have gone to the police, but they had to serve. It was like conscription. And you'll be surprised how good they were. And initially it was only a few months. Then it became 1 year, then it became 2 years. And if you joined the South African Police Force, it was 4 years. Now, I joined the South African Police Force because I wanted to. Simply because I felt at home there. I wanted to be a policeman. And also the South African Police Force are totally different. It's paramilitary. And so you could also be a soldier. In fact, the South African Police Force had its own counterinsurgency units who were really, really good. And I was part of them for a couple of years. I served 6 years in total. And also, during those days, you were confronted with a very, very violent crime, as well as terrorism. Now, of course, as I say in many of my books, it really depends on which side you are when you talk about the terrorist. You know, for some people, something like Bin Laden is actually not a terrorist, but a hero. For other people, he would be a terrorist, end of story. It really depends where you stand when you look at these things. But I had great fun in the South African Police Force. And then I left and I became an attorney at a very, very famous human rights law firm. And there I decided I will go on my own and start something called forensic law. Then you can't get the police out of you. That's a thing in life. But with all the years which has gone past now, I don't speak police anymore, meaning I can speak properly without using F words and all sorts of things. But the attitude and the way of looking at life, I suppose, you will never escape your instructors. And after that, I got involved what you call the shadows. In other words, I started working in intelligence. Doesn't really matter for who or exactly what we did. But from that also came a lot of books. So about 4 years ago, in 2021, I was in Switzerland, which I call Swineland. And I was based there with my wife, who is a wonderful person, Rebecca, also an author in her own right, businesswoman, very successful, Swiss American from a Jewish home. And so I found myself in Switzerland, and of course, you know, if you're from Africa and you have African degrees, according to a Swiss, you ain't as smart as you think you are. You know, it's not Swiss, not Swiss. So I found myself actually being a housewife, sort of, you know, cleaning, cooking, all the usual stuff. And I was really upset with life, and I asked myself, why am I here? And I actually asked God, because I'm a Seventh-day Adventist, very serious about my religion, very serious about being a Protestant. And for those who don't know, Seventh-day Adventist, biggest Protestant church in the world, 22 million of them. And guess what? They also live about 11 years longer than anybody else in the US. Why? Because we're vegans. We're vegans, so am I. It was easy for me to do, actually, with a wife which I have right now. But I grew up, of course, eating meat and, you know, eating everything which I think most of you will be eating. Point I'm trying to make is I got an answer back in Switzerland to say to me, go and speak to the army. And so that's exactly what I did. I went and I spoke to the South African military veterans. Now, whether that be intelligence people or whether that be policemen or whether that be army or whether, it makes no difference. And I don't distinguish between rank as well. Yes, we had from Major Generals there to, you know, to the lowest troop or rifleman. And all of them has fantastic stories. And all of them were volunteers, up to a point, of course. But they all made the very best they could of it. And from that, we started understanding what happened to us in the war, because We were same as the Vietnam generation in the US. We would come back home from the wars and nobody would give a single whatever, And so you couldn't really speak about it either. In the first place, there was secrecy. And we took our oaths, of course, very, very seriously. And if you started talking in those days, there's a good chance of you being arrested. And the law would then take its course. And so for many years, these men and women said nothing, just kept quiet. But on the other side, those who were opposing us, and let me just be clear to you, we were really under the impression, and there's a lot of fact in this because it's true, that we were fighting communism. We weren't really fighting for apartheid or thinking of ourselves as apartheid keepers or warriors, anything like that. Not at all. We were thinking, well, we can see that these people opposing us are all armed by the Soviet Union. They trained by the Soviet Union, or North Korea, or China, Red China, Communist China. The weapons they use are all from them. And they are all saying they're communists and they want a communist regime change inside South Africa. And this was at the time of the Cold War. In South Africa, traditionally, the old South Africa anyway, was always on the side of the West. In the sense that South Africa always was a former colony, a dominion actually, which is a super colony of the British Empire since about 1910. It's a long story. It's in many of my books as well. But so South Africa fought on the side of the West in the First World War, Second World War, as well as Korea. And in Korea, the Air Force was there and they did very, very well. And many times when I say to people, are you aware that there's an Air Force in Africa with higher readiness figures and probably better than the Israeli Air Force at the time? Of course, it's in theater. You cannot really take that Air Force and bring it here and expect it to succeed. It won't. And you cannot take us to the Middle East and think we're going to succeed, because we will not. But generally, based on turnaround figures, we could bomb up aircraft and replace them or make them whole again to be able to fly, since we didn't have a big uncle there in the US to assist us. We could do remarkable things. That also came out on the Legacy program. And what came out on Legacy also is the many books which I wrote before I started Legacy. Sometimes under my own name, sometimes under a pseudonym. Virtually everything which I wrote in the books is confirmed. I would sit there and I would speak to Special Forces members, and now let me just say to you, the South African Army Special Forces are rated as under the top in the world. The dropout figures, if you go on selection, which is always written with a capital S in my books because of respect, it's always about 94%, which means that about between 5 and 6 men out of 100 will make it. So 94%, 95% of them will not make it. And no woman ever. But that's arguable as well. It's in my books. And then to put this in perspective to you, the Green Berets is about 64% dropout, as well as French Army Special Forces. Navy SEALs about 80%, especially SEAL Team 6. It's still way lower than ours. And so in our theater, ain't nobody better. And what made these men so special is they could operate 2,000 kilometers behind enemy lines without support. That is something which Western Special Forces just cannot do. There's no way in the world they can operate in any country without support. Whenever they go in, there's always a massive amount of conventional forces behind them waiting to go and rescue them. I discuss all of these things in my books as well. But I'm very grateful to say to you that it seems that a lot of the things I wrote in my books were actually confirmed, where I would say things like, well, South Africa had submarines. And they had them since 1969, and less than 1,000 people at that stage actually qualified as submariners and females only afterwards, after the changes came. Yeah, then it's true. And then if I would say things like, and you know what, these submarines have never been traced, actually, whenever we're in a combined operation with a Western or, China or Russian in modern days, if we're in a combined operation there with each other, training exercises, the South African submarines are still winning. They are not tracked. And then I go and I speak to the admirals on Legacy, and they say to me, yeah, of course, it's interesting, ever since 1969, guess what? Whenever we went up against a nuclear submarine or whatever, you know what? We always won every single engagement. So the books were confirmed. Now, of course, a lot of people here will sit and say to me, yeah, those submarines are not operational anymore. The admirals tell me a different story, guys. They tell me a different story, but in the books were operational. So let's talk about the books. After 20 years of being out of the police, I started noticing that our enemies of those days, the liberals, pakhare, as you say in Afrikaans, they were writing books and they were making movies and they were making all sorts of allegations about a lot of things which we apparently did, and I can assure you we did not. The rumor came out that in the police anyway, we could go and torture and kill anybody we wanted. Absolute bullshit. And it's just straight in your face. You're talking nonsense. Things that happen. It's a fairly large police force. We're talking about 140,000 men and women when I was there. And the women, by the way, not one of them was overweight. Why not? Because they were weighed like cattle. I think every week during training, they were weighed to see how if they pick up weight or lose. And that's how it was. And if you had a problem with your weight, you would definitely not be seen in uniform. And since it was paramilitary, with saluting everything and colonels and military ranks, man, they could send you somewhere running up and down a hill with a sandbag until you lose weight. You know what I mean? So it was a highly efficient police force, which also meant it had a lot of enemies. And a lot of this nonsense were coming out in books and, as I said, movies. And it was the in thing, after 1994, when Mr. Mandela came to power and democracy came to South Africa. Everybody was sort of, part of that. It was hard to find somebody who would say, well, you know what, actually, I was on the other side in those days. And we were on the other side. But as I explained to you, we were thinking we were fighting communism, and there was a very real threat going on as well. If you go to Legacy and you speak to some of the special branch or security police, who's also notorious, speak to them, they will tell you, they will say to you things which you certainly never knew about. So I always invite you, test my books. Don't just take what I say to you in them, because they're fairly shocking, some of the things which we reveal in those books. I always say to you, don't take it just lightly, don't just take my word. I can tell you now, I know what I'm talking about because I've been there and I've researched them very well, and I spoke to a lot of people. The books aren't just written, the books are written to educate. There's always a message in the books. Doesn't matter what else is happening in my books, there's always a message. No one reads one of my books without learning something. That's this constant thing which came out. But in 2012, I was out of the South African police force for more than 20 years. And I found myself also at a place where my late wife, well, she wasn't late then, but she was in the US. I was stuck in South Africa because I'm not welcome in the US. I'm on some of their lists. Ask me why. Man, I can think of many reasons, but I don't exactly know which one. But I'm not the enemy of the US at all. Not at all. Sometimes when you work in the shadows, you are seen with people, and they immediately assume you are part of those people, and you're not. You are there as, as something else. And since South Africa, the modern South Africa, is not a Western-orientated nation, it is a BRICS nation. You have to look at it from that context as well. So there's no hard feelings, but I don't rate the CIA or the Western intelligence highly at all. And it comes out in my books, and I give very, very good reasons why I say that, why I don't think much of it. But that's besides the point. I wrote the first books about the police. It's like an autobiography, so it's fairly accurate. Of course, not everything in it is the truth, and so help me God, not at all. When I started writing the books, I was saying to myself, well, you can write this in two ways. It can be funny, which it came out, quite funny, but a very serious subject, of course. Or you can write it in a very serious, boring, legal type of document. Nobody will read it. For the author, let me say to you, I never wanted to be an author. And I still don't consider myself to be an author, even though I wrote more than 65 books. For me, it just happened, man. I sometimes interview authors at Legacy, and then they would say to me, "Yes, I wanted to write this book since I was born, man." And I'm like, "Yeah, I wasn't like that. I wrote the books because I felt I had a story, and I wanted to bring our side of a picture out." So that's what I did with the Mean Streets books. It became known as the Mean Streets books, 3 of them. The first one is about my time in the South African Police College, which ain't got nothing to do with the Police Academy movies. Man, it's basic training for 6 months. You just run and you salute and you are trained. You are trained very well, but not well enough. And in the second book, where you're on the street, now I'm like a street cop, that's where the things get interesting, because in the units I was in, was involved with a lot of things which you saw in the news. But as a very junior member, I mean, I was a sergeant at about the age 20, 21, which was young. And there I stopped. Simply because, you know, if you do your work well in South Africa as a policeman, there's always somebody who says you either assaulted him or you murdered him or you did something, and then there's investigations against you. That's what I'm trying to say to you. The story of us being able to do whatever the hell we wanted is nonsense. Yes, there were units which did things they should not have done. I wasn't part of them. I washed my hands of them. I do mention them in the books because I was recruited to one of them. I never went there because I knew Mr. Mandela would be released. And the Mean Streets books then also was translated to Afrikaans. The only book which I ever wrote in Afrikaans was Gewetenlose Strate, which is basically the first two books of the Mean Streets just combined. They are very good books, but they're not my favorite books at all. Under my own name, of course, I wrote several other under my own name, mostly legal type of books, you know, what to do if a bank comes to try and screw you, which I always do. Called it your worst enemy, how to get them back. Because as an attorney, I really knew how to play the game. But anyway, by 2014, I realized there's no way I was going to get back to my wife, who is now passed, because she was stuck in Florida in the US, and she passed. And so I was stuck in a place called Bloemfontein where my mom lived. She's also passed now because of this snot illness, which maybe I can't mention. Yeah, the doctors actually put her in a ward at the age of 84, I think she was, and she was placed in a ward with these people. She got the illness, went into a coma. Thank you very much. But that's another story as well. You know, we're not even allowed to speak about that. As we found out, there's so much freedom of speech in the West. No, there's nothing. Nothing. And it will get worse because there's fascism is coming. Now, I've been saying these things on the Legacy show as well, and there's a lot of people with the great offense. And I realized that I need another channel to speak to you frankly. Therefore, not all of the videos will be on YouTube. Simply cannot. There's not enough freedom of speech. A lot of them will actually be on Rumble, where I feel more confident of being able to discuss certain things. But since they are not really related to Legacy as such, Legacy Conversations, that again is the reason why I said, let's just make a new channel. Legacy Conversations will not disappear. It's still there. It's got millions of views. almost 1 million hours of being watched in 4 years, which shows me that those people, and they used to say this to us all the time, and nobody is interested in you. No, we don't want to hear your story. No, man, no. We even had a word, we call it a GV, stands for grensvechter, border fighter. It's a contemptuous way of talking about somebody who, a veteran who wants to speak about his experiences during the war. And that war went on for 23 years, by the way. And the South African police were involved in it from the beginning, long before the national conscripts arrived, and were there all the way. In fact, it was a police unit called Kufud who killed 74% of all terrorists. But that was inside what's today known as Namibia, Wambuland, around about there. The army were further north. They were out in Angola. So it's better to say that those who escaped the army, which came down south, are the ones which were killed by the police. But the police did operate north of the border as well. Of course, in the shadows, you operate in many, many different countries. You're never supposed to operate in your own country. But that also happened. It's in the books. So I was stuck in Bloemfontein, and I was taking care of my mom. And I thought to myself, well, I wrote about 8 or 9 books already under my own name. And a friend of mine actually came to me and she said, look, why don't you write about your other life? And I said, no, I can't. I can't. In the first place, no one will believe me. And secondly, some of those teams are still operating. And thirdly, it just doesn't, I don't know. Everything you do in the shadows and covert action is illegal. Otherwise, it won't be covert. If you go and you plant a bomb somewhere, not saying it happened, of course, I'm just giving an example to you. If you go and plant a bomb somewhere and a terrorist, or what you consider is a terrorist, come driving past and you detonate, you blow that guy up, that's actually murder. If you go and you kidnap somebody or you snatch him, that's the language used, because you need information from him, well, man, that's kidnapping and torture and then murder. Because such a man will never be allowed to escape from you ever again, not in that world. So I had to make very sure that I write the books in a certain way which is fiction. But as they say, many, many people ask me, Chris, is this really fiction? It's a question I can answer as follows to you. Certain things in the books are definitely fiction. The characters are made up from many different people. Are they based upon people? Yes. Is there one person who is that good? No. But all of them you will find around the world in the different agencies, services, doing that type of work. So yes, they exist. They are there. The scenarios in the background where a book plays off is mostly based either upon a training scenario, or it will be based upon an actual operation which is disguised and denied. It's no use to come to me and say, okay, well, prove to me where is this and this. I cannot. And I will not even try. I would like to live a little bit longer than what I am now. So in that sense, if there stands fiction on the books, it is actually fictionalized. A lot of truth in the book. If I describe to you a certain weapon system, yes, that weapon system will be correct. If I describe to you a certain tradecraft in that world, yes, it's correct. If characters start talking history, they say to you, well, there's something strange happening in the Second World War. The UK, and as an Afrikaner, we don't really like the Brits because of war crimes which they committed. It's an open secret in our community, even if not in the rest of the world. We know about the concentration camps which they started. And 1 out of every 3 women and child who went into those concentration camps actually died. That's where the word concentration camps come from. That happened between 1899 and 1902. One third of the entire Afrikaner nation was wiped out. That is where apartheid actually started. And I do actually describe that to you in the books as well. And where does this come from? What happened? What's behind? The books aren't compromising. If I say to you, I don't rate you highly, don't see me as someone who hates you. I don't hate you. I don't hate you. I'm trying to help you. Why? Because I know what your enemies think of you. I know what we've seen. We've known what we've experienced. And we know that you are simply not up to scratch. You cannot tell me you're good enough with all your failures. I mean, if you take Obama's drone strike policy, which he had going, and it's still going on. You know, the drones fly around, and the people controlling them are sitting there outside Las Vegas playing computer games, you know, but real people actually die. Do you know that they actually miss the real target? And these are facts. Go and research. 96.2% of the time, they will kill the wrong person. Now, the one thing which I've learned in that world is that if you kill the wrong person, his brother, his father, his son, his sister, his mom, they are fairly angry about this because they're human beings the same as you. And so if I come and I kill your mom or I kill your little brother or whatever with a drone strike or whatever I do, you're going to get angry, and then you're going to be so angry that you might actually pick up a rifle and say, I'm going to kill the first American I can find. I'm going to kill you. Guys, that's what happened. And then you add religious aspects to it as well, which we write about a lot, because there's a lot of things in the background which you're not aware of, but you ought to be for your own safety. Because we're in the end days, and we can see the prophecies playing out. And I talk about that often in my books, often as a warning. I say again, it's a warning. And if I say to you, you have a worse counterterrorism record and counterinsurgency in the world history of militaries, I'm not joking. No, that's true. If I say to you, your weapon systems ain't good enough, man, you're going to lose the next war, is it an insult or is it a warning? Think about it. Am I insulting you or I'm saying to man, guys, this is what I've seen. I'm telling you. Then this war breaks out with Ukraine and Russia, totally caused by the West. What happens? What happens to your tanks? What happened to your aircraft? What happened to the Ukrainians trained by the NATO military who hasn't fought in a conventional war for how long? And yet you're arrogant enough to think you can go and train people? The Ukrainians can train you, man. And that's what should happen. But they don't see it like that. The argument is, oh, we spent so much money. Look at this. We spent What do you get for that money, mate? What are you getting for your money? It's this type of thing which I discuss in the books. If you take okay, let's take the No Such Agency, NSA. They intercept, and these figures are old. I mean, this is not current. I mean, this is about 5-6 years ago. You can double what I'm saying to you now. But they would grab out of the air with the intelligence efforts about 21,500,000 books every day. Right, 20 million of them. You know how long it takes you to read a 500-page book. If you, I suppose, have time and you really like the book, 1 day, 2 days perhaps. If you're a speed reader, 2 hours, I don't know. But if you're a normal person and you have to read a little bit and go to work, man, it's going to take you how long? It's going to take you 2 weeks to read such a book, even a month. So what they do is they have software which actually runs scans. So they would scan for something like kill the president, Jihadi whatever, or a name, Muhammad whatever, even my name will also be there. And then it pulls it out. This guy said this. Okay, and then there's another system which they call Memex, in South Africa anyway, but it's used by the British as well as other, what do they call themselves, the 20 eyes, what are those stupid names. They all use this program, software. And then you start linking each other together. So you'll be able to say, right, Chris has said this on this day, and then that message went to this guy, and so they link it up together. In fact, it started off as police investigations on syndicates, crime syndicates, so you can link everything together. So it doesn't really matter if you know what the guy said or not. You do know that you planted a barium charge on him, you got the reaction, and he picked up the phone and he called this guy. Bingo. Now, in America, that goes quite further. In the US, that means the moment they've done that, and the FBI, who I don't rate highly either, where they would now have a warrant, they always get it, it's never refused. It's pro forma, it is like legal spying on your own people. They get a warrant to listen in on this guy. But now this guy calls this guy. Oh, automatically we can listen to this guy as well. Oh, automatically we can listen to this guy as well. And guess what? Almost half of all terrorist attacks in the US takes place with the FBI behind it. Telling people to, you have to, perhaps you have to, don't like that senator, let's go. This is so unreal. It is unreal. It is unreal which came out in my books. It is fantastic. You read these things and you think to yourself, wow, it's a different world. Because it is. There's a different world out there, and you need to read the books to understand what I'm talking about. Now, every book is written on its own as its own story. And every book, as I said to you, will have a large element of truth in it. And every book will then follow up with the next book. There's 54 of them. I just finished the 54th one yesterday. My wife is now editing it. And every one of these books will explain something to you. So there will be a book like Codename Butterfly, where we speak about snipers and counter-snipers. And then we go into great detail, because I know snipers. And some of them in the book are actually real people and friends of mine. And I would sit down and say, well, I'm not the best of shots, but please tell me, how would you do that? And then they would say, well, you know what, you do this, this, and this. And then we reveal certain things which is totally unknown in the West. You take Codename Willow Bay. What happened there was, the scenario is as follows. There is a ship, and these things exist. And let's call them motherships. And they are like mobile prisons. So what happens is, the Western intelligence would go and snatch a guy and say in Kenya. And a lot of the time there's a wink-wink going on between the counter-espionage people in Kenya and the Western guys doing what they do. All the Chinese, we know about that too. Yeah, I know. But anyway, they grab this fellow who they think is a terrorist. Then they take him out. And they put him on the ship, and now he's going to be interrogated. The same as these houses which they had before they got caught out in Thailand and other places. Right? Same story. But now we're using ships. So the first question is, how do you track such a ship down? Well, very easy, because most ships are like aircraft, commercial ships now. They have ports. They go one, two, it's very boring. They go up, down, but not these ships. These ships would come to the coast, then they dash in a bit, then they go out a bit, then they circle around, then they go and fetch some supplies, then they go back to another coast. Then, you know what? We have satellites. We can track you. Yeah, we can track you. But not only can we track you, we have software to exactly show to us, woof, there's something strange here. Why is the ship doing this? It ought not to do this. Why is it? What's going on? Where does the ship come from? Oh, it's registered in in Panama. Okay, let's go and look. Who's the shareholders? Where does this money come from? And we start tracking you down. So once these motherships are identified, the question is, what now? And the answer was, we want to capture them. Why? Because we want to embarrass you. We want to show the world, look what you're doing to the poor Muslims. Look what you're doing to these poor Africans. And we make it a show trial. Can you see where the communism and BRICS and everything comes together? Yeah. Almost everything I predicted in my books came out. I want to tell you that. It's amazing. And I praise the Lord, because I was right. No one listened, and I don't care. These days, I'm neutral. I don't care. I'm not involved anymore. I just carry on with my life. But the answers, there's a lot of answers in the books. Now the question is, how do you capture such a ship, a mothership? Well, there's many ways. If it's lying somewhere at anchor, if you use your special forces, you just swim under the water. And remember, special forces It's not only military. There's a lot of countries who actually have special forces in their intelligence services, which is something I've not heard any Western analyst ever say to me. Try to remember, guys, I'm not a Western analyst at all. I'm not on the side of NATO. I don't care about NATO. I rate you low. But I care of you in the sense of I don't want to see you being hurt. But I'm not from your viewpoint. We are looking from a different viewpoint. That's what the GMJ books are about. George St. James. Those are the books you have to read to understand what I'm telling you now. And so a method had to be found to get onto these ships, because it's no use to arrive with your own warship, and yes, we have many, and just, put your cannon on it and say, well, you guys surrender or we sink you. Because they will not surrender. They will kill the hostages, and they will then blow that ship. They will scuttle it. How do I know that? I've seen your plans. Yeah, we captured your plans. I've seen it. I've spoken to some of you. Right, so now the scenario is as follows. How do we get onto that ship? I've already said your swimming will work, but only if it lies at anchor somewhere. Remember, these are covert actions. Second thing which people normally do, and everybody would have seen the movies, these tough lads, Navy SEALs, whatever they call themselves. Think of the French Marines. They also have fantastic naval warfare specialists, British Special Boat Squadron, the Royal Marines. Every nation has these people. It's not unique to you. Nothing unique about it. And everybody works it the same way. Everybody understands plus minus how to do this. There's nothing unique. It's not unique. But approaching with your rubber duck will not work. Once again, because you will be picked up. You'll be picked up by sonar. Remember, the people on board these mother ships are not a bunch of pirates from Somalia who's just there to make a bit of money and then smoke their hashish. I think have a good life over. Blah, blah. They're not. You're talking about former special forces people, intelligence officers. In all aspects, it's actually a warship without being a warship. Understand what I say? Because it's no use for you to interrogate a man through a damn pirate. If you captured the guy and you want to snatch him and you took him over, he has to be interrogated by your own people who actually have to then work with him to understand what he's saying and being able to put everything together. You don't really have such people. Sorry to say that to you. You don't. But you try. So anyway, to make a long story short, that will not work. Either the ship will be sunk or you will be shot dead long before you arrive. The other method, of course, is coming in, FBI hostage rescue style, coming in with helicopters, flare above it, fast rope down. Yeah, we can do that. We can do that. In fact, if you listen to Legacy and just listen to the guys from the South African Railway Police, Special Task Force, they were the ones who brought in fast roping, things like that, abseiling from helicopters into special forces in South Africa. They're the ones who learned it from, I believe, Israel, and that's where they started doing that. But you know what, with all the SAMs and the things flying around now, especially with the Ukraine war, you can buy these things anywhere because they don't reach the front lines. Very few do. I think your helicopters might be shot down right before you get close. And then, of course, the radar on that ship will pick you up. There's no such thing as a stealth helicopter or a stealth aircraft. It does not exist. Don't worry what your merchants of death tell you. I'm telling you it doesn't exist. I'll tell you straight, it's in some of the books that the Chinese Aegis type of destroyers will protect their carriers, which everybody laughs about, and that's another story. Don't know why. Because they're as big as the British ones, except they actually have aircraft on them, unlike the Royal Navies. Doesn't even have aircraft for them. Shame. But these Aegis class cruisers got phased array radar on them, which they got from Israel in the 90s, and then they improved it because Chinese are clever people. About 70-80% of your PhD graduates in engineering and IT All of them are Chinese. And they're going home. They're not staying in the US. The Indians are staying. You know why? You know why there's so many Indian nationals working in California with IT? You think perhaps they report back to the intelligence services in India? Have you ever thought about that? And then the Indian being part of BRICS perhaps tell their mates about it? Yes, that's exactly what's happening. But the Chinese are leaving. They're going home. And once they get home, they get funding. They have their own research and development places. They are so far ahead in artificial intelligence that the West can forget it. You're never going to get there. I've been warning about this in my books for so long. And because of that, they can track your F-35 and F-22 and your other stealth aircraft at a distance of at least 200 miles. And if they can track them, they can shoot them down. And if this is astonishing to you guys, how do you think I felt when I did all the research and I started looking at what the world is saying and what the truth is? And that's where another reason why I wrote the books. I wanted the truth to come out as a warning. And to make a long story short, you're not going to be able to do a helicopter way to capture this novel ship. But there is another way which we discovered and tested. And it's described in Codename Willow Bay, where we actually found a method how we can get onto that ship without the terrorists knowing. And that's all I need. If I can get people enough, Special Forces people, on top of that boat, I will take it. I will take it. And I will show the world your crimes. Luckily, up to now, it hasn't happened. Why not? I don't know. The planes are there, the capabilities are there. But I don't know why it hasn't happened. This is the type of thing which comes out in the GMZ books. It is fascinating. I can tell you for many hours such things. But I don't want to waste further time. Because you're going to find a lot of videos on this channel where I take a book. Let's take Codename Masamole 26. Now let me first say, the codename got nothing to do with the actual book. That is how it is in the military as well. You only know about Overlord and D-Day because you've learned about it afterwards. At that stage, you would have not had a clue what they're talking about. So what I did is I took the names and I said, well, let's put the names in certain ways. There is a fellow called Masamole. He helped me and Rebecca once. Let's honor this guy. Let's make it codename Masamole. You people will never know who's Masamole, the real man. I know, he knows. End of story. So you cannot judge a book by its cover, and you cannot judge a book by its name. They don't relate to each other. Well, the cover will, up to a point, of course. But you know the saying, don't judge a book by its cover. And in Codename Masamole, we use this very same method, the Willow Bay method, with Israeli operatives. Now, I don't rate Mossad highly either. Shocking. Let me clarify. In the Middle East, I think they are brilliant. They are fantastic. It is their own. They fit in. They speak the languages. They have their networks. They are fantastically good. Yes, and you'll say to me, what happened on 7 October 2.5 years ago? Yeah, I have theories on that, but I don't want to tell them here because you will think I don't want to tell them here, but I'm not so sure that they didn't know about it. And they got caught unawares. Or whether, I don't know, it is playing out the way which the politicians they actually wanted to play out right now. But normally they are fantastically good. But they're not good in Africa. Why not? Because they don't fit in. They don't look like us. They don't speak the languages. They don't know the culture. They just don't fit in. And then you meet people like me who's not impressed. The fact that you are in whatever three-letter agency or whatever, you're not impressing me. No. I want to see results. I want to see results. You know that 21,500,000 page books you recover every day? and then you run them through your system, and then you have failure upon failure upon failure, intelligence speaking. And then what do? You go to Congress, you say, yeah, Senator, if we were better funded, perhaps this should not have happened. And the senator, being an idiot and under your control, probably blackmailed somewhere, or under control of whoever. Okay, we'll give you the money. Give you the money. So what's this about? Is it about money? Or is it about getting success? For me, the result is everything. It's everything. If you go in and you want to do a hostage rescue, man, you better rescue that guy alive. Otherwise, it's a failure. Guys, I don't care how many you killed. And you kill way more people than what you should. In fact, it's in many of the books I speak about Koki, who was a teacher from Bloemfontein. I never knew the name, but I think it was in Yemen. And I believe it was SEAL Team 6 or somebody who tried to rescue him. In fact, they rescued one guy, that's true. Koki was killed. And they crashed one of his Osprey helicopters. Why? Because you can't land in the dark, in the sand. You don't have skills to do it. You lost 400 aircraft in Afghanistan and Iran against forces who don't have an air force to oppose you. These are facts. And why did you lose it? Because your pilots are not good enough. They're not good enough. You ask the Israelis, I spoke to my friends there. Guys, what are we doing wrong? Practice. Practice. Not that difficult. Go and ask the South African pilots if you want to. I believe we lost one helicopter because of that. Because of spatial disorientation. Why? Because the guys are trained. They know what they're doing. It is no use to lower your standards to a point where people are going to get killed. Especially not if your enemies know about it. What is the use of bullshitting yourself, gentlemen? It's no use to get angry for me because the facts still stand. You arrived there in Yemen. One of our hostages was killed. Obama could not even say his name. He just said it was another hostage. He couldn't even say who it was. That's how flippant unimportant it was for you. Yes, true. And then you shot out, make me think, 37,000 rounds. 37,000 rounds you shot out in that rescue attempt. Then came big liberal organizations, the ones who I personally don't like that much, even though I was a human rights attorney myself. Human Rights Watch, these people, they came out and they said, well, you killed about between 55 and 57 innocents that day. My question is, how on earth can you shoot 37,000 bullets out and you only kill at the most 57 people? Man, that's not good enough. You shouldn't use more than 2 bullets to kill somebody. It's called the double tap. Yes. And you think it cannot be done? Go and read my books. Go and read my books. You will find out what happened at a place called Mthatha, I think in 1992. When members of the South African Special Forces went into a house. Yeah. And they killed, I think, 4 or 5 people. And they fired 24 shots. Of course, people will say to me, well, it was different, people also say to me, yeah, we killed children. In fact, it wasn't children. Sadly, a lot of child soldiers were actually used during our wars. Sadly so. And a lot of female soldiers were also used. And the enemy, of course, would use that to great advantage. Oh, look at this. Oh, they're paying other females. I'll tell you a story here right at the end. So we were conducting training. And it is in one of the books. I don't know which one anymore. And we were training new operatives. And what would happen is you would have your typical hostage scenario thing, and the people come in, and then they have to choose who they shoot, and to make it easy, the person they have to shoot will have like an AK-47 or whatever weapon with him. In fact, we started using we put a Uzi there as well, or M4 rifle or whatever, because according from South Africa's viewpoint, those are the enemies. Let that sink in. Somebody carrying an Uzi or a M4 is the enemy. Totally different from my time in the police. Totally different. But you have to wake up to these facts. That's why you need to read the books, so you can wake up, you can understand where I'm coming from. And so we had this most beautiful woman there. She was actually part in her young days, part of a Bader-Meinhof gang in West Germany. Highly educated, very attractive woman. Now, of course, not like she looks today. I mean, she must be in the 70s. She's still very elegant. She's been released from jail, and she served her time, and I wish her well. But we used pictures and things of her as a younger woman, You know, she still got it. And we put her in as one of our hostage takers. And would you believe the men came in and they wouldn't shoot at her? They just would not shoot at her. She had the weapon with her. She had everything. You can clearly see she's a terrorist. She's got to be killed. And so we had to stop proceedings. Guys, what's wrong? Why don't you shoot her? No. She's a woman. We can't. I understand. If you ask me to shoot at my own uniform, I cannot do that. I just cannot do that. It's so drilled into me. I cannot do that. So we had to train them to overcome it. But then I thought, let's do an experiment here. Let's see if female operatives will shoot her. Yeah, they shot her. They had no problem. They would just come in, shoot her. No problem whatsoever. And after a while, after the lad started realizing that she can actually kill them in return, then she got killed as well. Talking about a picture now, not a real person, right? So I thought, okay, let's see if we can get there like a good-looking guy there, you know, something like, I don't know, Brad Pitt or whatever, anything that doesn't look like me. Let's get that in there. Let's see if the females are going to shoot this guy. Yeah, they went and they shot, no problem. And the lads as well, end of story. Now, this is important because I'm not sure that this type of training is used in other forces as well. It might be. I hope it is, because you don't know in that world who's the enemy and who's not. You cannot differentiate and say, well, the guy's black and he's carrying a rifle, so therefore you have to shoot him. No. He can be white. He can be white. He can be Indian. He can be Japanese. He can be anything. But you cannot kill somebody without reason. And that is the problem which we have, which comes out in the books all the time, is the way that the counterterrorism operations are being conducted these days by the West is leading to more terrorism. It is a failure upon failure upon failure. It's so much so that you have to start wondering what on earth is going on. And that's when I wrote a book called Oath of Evil, The War on Protestantism. Because I was asking myself a question in those years. I said to myself, Chris, why is it that the USA is actually supporting terrorism? Wow. They were good guys. How can they do such things? Is that possible even? Well, if you look at terrorism in the world today, and you go on the Muslim side of it, the jihadis, which is a tiny fraction of Muslims. Don't hate Muslims just because, you know, there's a few jihadis around who's causing trouble. The same as don't hate the Jews because there's some of them who's a bit, you know, gone too far. And then this, you know, you get these people everywhere. You get them in your community as well. And I make very, very sure that you understand that message. Not all of them are your enemy. That's what the politicians want you to think. But guys, it's not true. It's not true. But to make a long story short, they are split into two groups, and I'm speaking very broadly now, right? And I will discuss this in other books as well. Like Codename Wednesday 7 is dealing with this, with specifically on how you can take a book like the Quran and you can change it around to suit yourself, that you can even torture women and children for the cause, which is not allowed under the faith. But yet it happens. And it's the same with our, we call them dominees, pastors, who were telling us during apartheid that apartheid was right. It's not a problem. That's the way it was. These people carry water, you know. They said such things, and we believed them. We didn't know better. And it's the same with, if you go back to American Civil War, when you had the Southern pastors saying things like, yeah, slavery, you know, if you look at the Bible, man, yeah, slavery has always been with us, you know, it's actually biblical. These Northerners, you know, they're a bunch of liberals, man. There's something, no. Guys, you need to understand your enemy, right? You need to understand what you're dealing with. And so at Codename Wednesday 7, we actually look at these things. We look at why they are acting the way they are, and they're not insane. That's the other thing people should get away with. It's not to say because a guy commits an act of terror that he's insane. He's not, mostly he's not. They don't like insane people because they can't follow orders. And it's not a matter of grabbing a guy just suddenly and say, hey, I want you to go and fly that aircraft into the buildings, you know. Guys can say, what's wrong with you, man? I'll go to the police, or what's wrong with you? No, you have to work with him. You have to change him. And then you get to the difference between a fundamentalist and a radical. Not the same thing. I'm a fundamentalist. I believe in the Bible. The Bible says God created the world, everything in it. I believe it. How long ago? Well, about 6,000 years, I think. That's what the Bible says. End of story. Does that make me a radical? Does that make me a jihadi in a Christian view? And I'll go and kill you? No, not at all. But you'll be surprised how few people actually know this, which is a big problem. So to get back to my question, what on earth is going on that the US is supporting terrorism? Again, I have to say, and I just want to repeat this, is that the Muslims are divided into two broad groups. That is the Sunnis and the Shia. And as I said to you, we discussed this in Codename Wednesday 7 as well, but we go into a great detail in it with Oath of Evil, the war on Protestantism. And you know what? Most of the terrorist attacks which you all know about, you know about ISIS, Bin Laden, Al-Qaeda, all of them are Sunni Muslims. They're not Shia. And then you have Iran. Iran is Shia. And these people don't like each other. Not at all. They can sometimes live with each other, but a lot of the times they cannot. The same as the Catholic Christian in the old days, Catholic Protestant. I'm Protestant, Catholic. I'm sure they wouldn't like my comments. But it's biblical. And I don't hate Catholics. I don't want to say that. Don't hate Catholics. Just the truth, the way I see it. To make a long story short, the US is supporting Sunni terrorism. I have all the evidence in the world. So is Saudi. So is some of the other Middle Eastern countries. So would be Pakistan. Yeah, if you read Codename Caribbean, and there is a video on it already out, then you will find out that those guys who attacked Mumbai, I think in 2008, were trained by former Pakistani Special Forces, was very good. They're based upon the British SAS. And they were trained to take over ships because that's what they want to do. Because if they can take one of these LNG, liquefied natural gas, if you can take that thing and you make it explode, and I can make it explode, it's not difficult. Guess what, guys? 55 atomic bombs of a Hiroshima size. That's the explosion. It's going to follow on a 100,000 ton ship. Guess what's going to happen to New York, Rotterdam? Yeah, it's going to flatten it. It's going to flatten it. And so we were turning towards maritime terrorism, which is why I wrote a book about it. Also taking over, let's say, a passenger ship. But it's fascinating to me that Iran, who's the people who are supposed to assist the West and the US against these people, who's committing all these terror acts, they are enemy number one. Yeah, they being suppressed, man. They being, you know what? The generals are getting killed. The embassies are getting bombed. They are being accused of having nuclear weapons. They don't have nuclear weapons. Israel does. We all know it. Come out to the truth. I wrote about that too. Israel's got the nuclear weapons and is denying it. I don't hate Israel. Not at all. No. My mother, my grandmother was actually Jewish. She escaped Nazi Germany. Go and read the two books which my wife and myself wrote. Well, I wrote most of it. She had inside called When Does It End and Where Does It End? Books where I reveal about the Jewish army rescuing Jews in occupied France during World War II. It's fantastic. It's fantastic. But you cannot deny you have nuclear arms. Of course you do. We all know you do. But what's fascinating to me is there's something happening in the world. Because the one would say this and the other one would say that, and then they go and do this, and nobody knows anything further. And unless you have a much bigger strategic viewpoint, and I'm going to make probably more than one episode on that book, Oath of Evil, because that is not fiction at all. You know, about 50 of the books are marked as fiction, and the rest of them are marked non-fiction, like Intelligence Briefing or War Crimes USA. Voices, War Crimes USA, yeah. Be surprised how many war crimes you actually commit every single day. I just highlighted a few. Why did I do that? Because you're losing the war on terror, and you're going to lose the war against China as well, and you're going to lose against Russia if you take them on. And you're definitely going to lose if you take on any of the two of them together, China and Russia. You're going to see your ass. So it is warnings. It's nothing but warnings. Again, what I say to you, we have to speak upfront with each other. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'll be glad to be wrong. But I'm not wrong. I'm not wrong. There's a lot of problems here which we need to address. And it doesn't help for you to go out and kill those who's actually assisting you with your own efforts. It doesn't help you do that. It makes no sense. So unless you have a higher picture and you say, well, there is a God, there is Satan, there is another world, there is heaven, hell. Well, we can speak about hell because it doesn't really exist according to the seventh day, the way we read the Bible. It will exist for a very, very short time, but again, you have to read the Oath of Evil because you're going to see things which you don't understand. But also in the Bible, there's three things which are identified. The Antichrist, which we think is Rome, the papacy. Then also there's the first beast. This is all from the books of Daniel and Revelation. And we think that first beast was run the Catholic Church in this state, in this manner. Note, I'm not saying Catholics, I'm saying a system. Please don't put words in my mouth. And then the second beast which arises from many nations would be the USA. And that second beast is going to follow the instructions of the first beast. And they're going to recreate fascism. And they're going to go back to the Middle Ages. And it's going to be a time of you've never seen before. And no, there will not be some people who are going to heaven so long and you being left behind. That does not exist. It's nonsense. It's Hollywood. It's Hollywood. It's not what the Bible says. And these are the type of truths which comes out in those books and in Oath of Evil and the last 12 books. Why I wrote it into the story to start explaining the cult world and what's happening behind the scenes. Is it important? Yes, because they are affecting you. It doesn't matter where you stand. I'm sure you're a good person. I'm sure you go to church. Perhaps you do, perhaps you don't. I don't care, actually. But the fact of the matter is, there's games being played in the background which you should be aware of. Your Hegelian dialectic, which is explained in codename GSSP 40, a book which is actually called after my mom. There's a lot of truths in these books. And it's because I was asking these questions about what on earth is going on. Why are people fighting with each other who shouldn't? And people who should be fighting are not fighting. And the end result is there's no Christians left in the Middle East. No, they did. They're not there anymore. Nah. Ever since the US invaded Iraq and started meddling there, they gone. They gone. Was it by chance? Well, no, of course not. Not if all your presidents have secret handshakes, the old Freemason handshake and standing like this, standing like this. Yeah, we know all this, right? We can read your occult language and we understand who you're reporting to fully. That's why the books are suppressed. That is why some of the books, codenamed Bella Dawn, actually had the manuscript changed by Amazon. Would you believe? I wrote something about, I think it's page 1, first paragraph. Obama said something like, ISIS is the junior varsity league or something, and he basically said nothing, don't worry about it. It was in 2015. And guess what happened the very, very next day? They attacked France. They attacked Paris. They killed more than 125 people before they were killed. France is still under a state of emergency because of it. And of course, that made Obama look like an idiot. And guess what? Amazon just took this book and we'll take this paragraph out. Yeah. Which is why I say to you, the books are available in audio, available on Amazon in Kindle, they're available in hardcover, softcover, if they did. Hardcover, if they less than 550 pages. Some of the books are much longer. It's always better to get a book in paper because that cannot be changed. Not easily. We should be aware of it if we do it. So certain books you really need to get hold of if you can. None of the books will ever be available in the Apple format. Why not? Also 2015, I believe, San Bernardino. It's a place in California. Some nutcase thought he's going to be a jihadi or something, started killing people. And when he got killed, and the FBI did the investigation, they found his iPhone. They got to a court, got a court order. Go to Apple, guys, here's a court order. Please help. Let's break his phone. Let's see who he is contacting this, that we can do the investigation. And Apple said to him, take a hike. We're not going to help you. And you know that court order? We don't care. We Apple. We don't care. And so they went to Israelis who broke a phone for him, of course. They have this very special unit with 808, I believe, who can do these things easily. And if you think that your Signal or your WhatsApp or Telegram or whatever is not being listened to, oh man, of course you're being listened to. They're listening to me right now, speaking to you. But to make a long story short, therefore I consider Apple to be a terrorist organization. They support terrorism. They should never be assisted, and they will never in their life have a privilege of having my books on their format. Not going to happen, guys. It's either Amazon. Some of the books are available in South Africa, and with all the book videos, which is in this channel, you'll find all the links. I can just ask you to go and read it. I can just ask you to spread the word. I can just ask you if you enjoyed the book, if you learned something from it. Guys, just leave a good review somewhere, because I assure you our enemies are leaving very bad reviews because they don't want the books to be read. And you know you're influenced by that. Myself, if I go on Shopee or anything here in Thailand where I live now, and I see, this thing's got a bad review, man, I'll go to the next one. But I think when we speak about the truth, as we're trying to speak here now, as warnings meant to mean, uh, try it out before you judge. Try it out before you judge. And that's my story. Thank you for listening so far. I will speak to you again. You can see from my comments I made here, these are things are not really suitable for a Legacy Conversations channel. That is simply a military history veterans telling their story. These things are up to today. It's very, very fascinating, but I think I know I'm very, very glad to have made a channel on my own. Even if there's very few people listening, I don't care. If you found it interesting, show your mates. Otherwise, you know what? God bless, have peace. I wish you all the best in the world. And I hope I'll see you again.